Game over. It is game over.
Game over, cancer. I'm Val Solomon, Director of Program Impact at Cannonball Kids Cancer Foundation.
And I'm Dana Nichols, Executive Director of CKC.
Game Over Cancer, a podcast dedicated to exploring conversations about pediatric cancer research, solutions, and inspiring family stories.
We're a nonprofit dedicated to creating innovative treatment options for kids fighting cancer and educating for change.
By creating a space for these conversations, we empower the community to take action and provide tangible hope.
Game over, cancer. Screw you, cancer.
So today's episode is part 2 of our discussion of the changing landscape of pediatric cancer funding in 2026. We had one episode where we were just kind of acknowledging that we've heard a lot about changes coming down the pipeline from our from the federal funding standpoint, and so now we have more information, and we'd like to share that with you. But what does that look like, right? So we have a lot more info, and I want to make sure that you know we're pulling this from the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, and we're going to have all of our information that we reference in our show notes. So if you want to learn more about anything we talk about, we'll have that available.
If they want to fact check us.
If they want to fact check us, please do so.
Please do.
And so we have that stuff available for you. But today we're going to talk about, again, the updates for the federal funding for pediatric cancer research in 2026. We'll also talk about how those changes will affect the whole landscape, not just federal dollars, but what the rest of that funding looks like. And then touch on advocacy efforts from the cancer community that have just recently happened in DC. We'll also chat about, hot off the presses this week, we have an executive order for $50 million for the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, or CCDI. We'll talk about what that looks like. And since we're based in Florida, we wanted to mention some of the recent commitments that we have had from our state to invest in cancer research. So we have a lot going on today, but a lot of really great information. So please welcome us.
Woohoo! I like us. Well, I also think it's interesting, just to start off, is like when you're saying this is part 2, you can see how all year we're waiting and trying to figure out information. And by the way, still fundraising and still trying to greenlight research, because that needs to happen either way.
Right.
But when we talk about like what an uncertain landscape, it's months since we feel like we've been able to be like, okay, now we understand there's new information. Here it is.
Right. And I think that first episode we recorded somewhere end of April, early May, probably. And now this is first week of October when we're recording this. So again, timestamp, all of our information is available through the first week of October, 2025.
Yes. Breaking news to some extent. And it's very timely because we're coming out of September, which is Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month. And I think even when you're talking about some of the advocacy efforts that are going on, is because that is a time when people are trying to make the most noise or be heard, because we are all making noise all year long about this problem, but heard a little bit more. So we're excited to have something there to talk about. But I know you want to start with a reminder, or for people who are just getting to know us, about the history of pediatric cancer funding. Where do we start in January versus what we're talking about is about to happen?
Yeah, exactly. So to understand the landscape, the entire landscape of pediatric cancer funding for research in the U.S., you have to understand that there are lots of different pieces, right? So we have federal funding that supplies money to the national, to NIH, National Institute of Health, that goes into the NCI, National Cancer Institute. That's one pot of funding. Then there are states that might invest in the research that happens within their own state. We have so many foundations across the country that are raising private dollars from individuals, from corporations, partnering with each other to also try to infuse more investment into pediatric cancer research. Yeah. Now, typically, and it's really hard to tell, but from what we can see, if you put together all of the foundation dollars in the country, it almost competes with what is invested from the federal government.
So let's break that down one piece there. So the NIH gets funded. They designate a certain amount to NCI. That has been, in the past while, about $7 billion. But then actually, only 4% goes to pediatric cancer research. So $7 billion is a huge number.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds big, but 4% of that is like under 300 million.
Right.
So it's so awesome when you say private foundations almost match, but at the same time, it's because the number's so low that the government that is giving us all this money to research cancer invest in that is really not investing in our kids.
Correct. And that's why if you're not involved in this conversation all of the time, but maybe know people who have been doing advocacy work, if you've ever heard the phrase more than 4, that's where that comes from. 4% of that budget for cancer research actually goes to researching all the types of pediatric cancers, not just one, right?
Yeah.
So it's split against all of the different subtypes of pediatric cancer, which are hundreds of subtypes.
Yes.
So that's where we started coming into this year. And what we're talking about are the federal funding cuts that have been proposed for the 2026 federal budget and what that looks like. So I think if we maybe start with what is that overall cut? So the overall cut from 2025 to 2026 for the NCI is about 37%. So when Dana mentioned that $7 billion dollar amount, it's going from that down to 4.53 billion. And that is the lowest funding level since in about 20 years. So 2002 was the last time that was the level that we had investment in cancer research.
That's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
I don't know if you know this, but I graduated high school in 2002 and went to college.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, when I think of little baby me, gonna go change the world, like, gonna go be a nonprofit administrator, which, now I am 20 years later. What you're saying is the funding for what we do just set back to when I was 17 years old.
Right. And, like, the other piece of that, too, is an analogy that we use a whole lot of time when we're talking about the innovation and what can change when you invest in it. What did your cell phone look like in 2002? Did you have one?
I did for emergencies only. Obviously, you could only call me after 7
After
if you
7
just wanted a
p.m.
chitty chat. It was a Nokia. It had a green cover.
Love it.
And so, I think there's a give and take. Do I think my life might be a little better if that was still just my cell phone?
Right. Maybe should have stopped there.
Yes. But also, the point is, no one is walking around with that phone today because I've had probably 10 phones since. And yet, in 2002, many of the treatments that we were giving kids even then were already outdated.
Correct.
Couldn't compete with that Nokia phone in that metaphor. And we're still giving them that today. Texting on our, little tiny computers from our hands while we're in the waiting room to hear how our children are doing.
Right. So if you are ever talking with a parent and they're upset about the slow-moving process of finding innovative treatments for kids, that's why. It's because we have a new phone every 8 months. And, if someone handed you a Nokia today and said, here, use this, you might slap it out of their hand. You'd be frustrated.
Or I'd play the snake game.
Yeah, right. Well, we're getting off topic. Okay. Let's come back.
Other topics.
So a 37% cut.
Yeah.
What does that look like? That's what are some of the things that are being cut from that budget that we had in 2025 that we will no longer have in 2026?
So you said we're going from $7 billion to $4 billion overall.
For the NCI.
For the NCI, which means that's 4% of only $4 billion. So let's say that's $113 million. Again, feel free to comment on our math. I think it's pretty amazing, but we're doing our best here.
Yeah.
The implications are kind of insane, right? So if you have so much less, you're talking about overall 1,000 plus fewer grants. 27 research centers consolidating to 5. And then this is the part that, we're yelling about every time, me and you, when we're alone.
Yeah.
Cuts to existing projects, not just less new ones that have already been greenlight, ones that have children signing up to participate, to have a potentially life-saving or life-extending treatment gone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's way more than, oh, we need to tighten the belt, cut the excess. We're abandoning midstream progress, decades and decades, and making sure that the future decades are halted, gone, slowed.
Mm-hmm.
Find a nice word if you want, but I'm not going to, because at the end of the day, you're saying these kids who are putting their life on the line for someone else, that for the most part, a lot of life extending treatment, you know that you have extra time with your family, but really what you're doing is the promise of maybe helping another child in the future is for nothing.
It's really the most devastating part of that, I think, because we have met so many families whose children were on a clinical trial before they passed. And like you said, exactly that. They, at some point, have to accept that while this may extend their life, this is not going to save them. But it is still important to them to have made a difference for the next generation of kids, and to know that things are going to be interrupted in terms of, just not being able to make the progress that we know we could, and keep the momentum is one thing, but to have that promise with a family and then not be able to keep it is devastating.
Yeah. I think that what we need to understand about a clinical trial is it's not just people going into treatment. This is a scientific process. So you have to collect all the data, at the end, make a statement and findings, and be able to move forward on your research. So if you're cut off at that point, nothing happens with that data. When we talk about how slow it already is, even when there's the good in pediatric cancer research, when we talk about Cannon's life-saving neuroblastoma clinical trial that now is a standard of care, from the time we're created when Cannon is a toddler to now when he's a teenager, that's the amount of time we need. So if things stop today that aren't quite finished, that haven't wrapped up, that we haven't seen the results and come up with our, final statement of if this is working or not, and this is where we're going next, then what happens?
Exactly. And so what specifically then, I think the next question would be, are the research programs that are going to be cut? So specifically from the NCI report, some of the things that we were able to pull is that research programs like the Pediatric Brain Tumor Consortium, and remember, brain tumors are some of the most deadly cancers that kids and adults, but that kids have, with the fewest survivors, right? Like there are types of brain cancers like DIPG that have 0% long-term survival rate. Those projects and the Pediatric Early Phase Clinical Trial Network are likely to be cut by 21%. Intramural research. So this was something interesting that I didn't realize until we sort of started digging into this information, but there is a line item within the NCI budget for intramural research. And what it really is like, if there is an idea that is so out of the box, but the risk to reward would be, we could really make a really huge impact and move treatments of cancer forward. It's just maybe too complex, or it's just too hard to do in other areas, like privately funded research, like there's not going to be a pharmaceutical company that will sign on to this. There's a line item for intramural research, which drives the most bold, high-risk innovations that few others are willing to take in. That's going to lose 36%. So it's like not just that we're abandoning some of these research projects. It's that we're abandoning the most innovative ways to generate these ideas and the funding to actually carry them out. It's like we're being cut in the worst way possible for if what you'd like to try to do is cure cancer.
Yeah.
The next piece is training awards for emerging scientists. So not just to develop the time from I have this idea to I'm going to create this clinical trial as a researcher, and now I have a new drug that can go to market and be given to children. But it takes time to develop the researcher in their career as well. And so there's cuts to emerging scientists, resources that are going to be 37.4%, which is not just, cuts now, but cuts to developing people who can do this type of work in the future.
Right. If there's no one staying in this field, then it doesn't matter if we're able to right this ship and in a year, 3 years, 5 years, bring funding back. If you don't invest in these researchers today, in 5 years, you don't have a scientist to hand funds to.
That's right. They won't be there to do the work later. The last one here that we'll mention is the Pediatric Immunotherapy Discovery and Development Network, or PIDDN, and that's the promising initiative for accelerating immunotherapy for aggressive childhood cancers facing an uncertain future under these budget constraints. So we don't have a specific percentage there, but that is one of the things that has been funded through the NCI. And so when you look at immunotherapy, since the time I've been involved with CKC, that has been one of the fastest moving ways to do the two things that we want to do. One, save more lives. Two, have a better quality of life post-cancer treatment.
Yeah.
So some big cuts, some really devastating news there.
And when you hear each of these bullet points, all I keep thinking in my head is like, right, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. But the issue is we are already here because what was happening was not enough. Now we're saying this is going away. We know then our need grows exponentially, but how do we suddenly fill that gap? There's no safety net here.
Right. There isn't. Because remember, like we said, federal dollars make up one portion. And if you put all of the foundations together across the entire country, we maybe make that up if we all double our budgets, which is impossible. It's impossible.
I think we should just double it.
Just double it.
Just double it. Guys, this year we're just going to double it. Everybody hands in. And then we'll be all right.
So the last thing that we want to talk about, too, that was mentioned in the NCI report, before talking about a couple other things that we've been chatting with some of our families doing advocacy, was that to absorb a lot of these cuts, the NCI is going to be capping portions of the grants that can be used for administrative and facility costs, and that will be capped at 15%. So what does that mean, right? So what that means is if you are lucky enough to get some of these dwindling federal dollars, that when you get that awarded grant, you can only spend up to 15% paying the people to do the work, because it's not just one researcher. Right. They have a lab of people that helps them continue the work in the lab while they're also treating patients. So the money to pay people to do the work and the money to upkeep the facility. And sometimes you have, the equipment, the facility, sometimes you have, in an innovative treatment, you might have to develop the drug. You might have to develop the delivery system. You might have to make changes to a facility itself to be able to accommodate the research you'd like it to do. That will be capped at 15%.
I think it's that when it's reduce waste, reduce us. There is none in this field. And so tighten the belt. Now we're giving you more restrictions, and you just need to be grateful that you still got your grant and can go do the work.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
No, it's not enough. So what's happening now? The response, so that came out a few months ago, right? We've been talking about this since the summer when that report was issued.
Like July, August.
And part of what makes this podcast episode really hard to produce, right, for us is that we've been talking about this since the moment we heard about it, and we're just like, what have we said to different people? So we're trying to make sure that we cover everything we possibly can in this podcast. But this next section is fairly new because like we mentioned, it's the first week of October. We are just coming out of Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month. And so as a part of that, a lot of families have, as they do every year, gone up to the Hill to advocate for more support for pediatric cancer services, research, just any kind of support, making sure that it stays in budget, but also that what more can be done, what bills can be passed. And so, like I said, this happens every year. There are some families that when they talk about getting activated after they've dealt with their own cancer journey, a part of their survivorship for the child, for the family, is to maybe get involved in funding research, maybe do advocacy work and really talk about what it is about their story that they want legislator to know and understand they went through as a constituent. So these are different ways for folks to get activated. And I talked with 2 moms recently, one by email, one over Zoom. And Emily, who we've talked about, her daughter Brianna has a grant from CKC named after her that we did from this past year. Brianna passed away from neuroblastoma. And in speaking with Emily, she was not directly on the Hill, but she lives very close. And so she, the advocacy days are a really great, important time for her to be able to connect with a lot of people that she maybe only knows over social media. So I just want to share a little bit of our conversation, because I think we need to acknowledge, before we talk about what happened on the Hill, we need to acknowledge the incredible heavy lift that it is for these families to do that work. So not only have you either lost a child or have you gone through cancer treatment yourself and you're up there advocating for it, you're living in that trauma every single day. It is such a heavy lift. And so just in sharing with, some of the things that we chatted about, she talked about a lot of the really great programming happening up on the Hill, and she can maybe do 1 or 2 things because it is still just a year and some months since Brianna has passed. And so, her friends are sending pictures of Brianna being acknowledged and all of this wonderful work. And it's great to have that happen. And it is an incredible lift for these families to do that.
Yeah.
And so just wanted to mention that as we were chatting through this conversation this morning. Another story that we've been talking about, and that family that we have connected with, we had Aubrey on a podcast episode. Of course, her daughter Grace is very active in advocacy. That's where she's felt pulled and activated. So I reached out because they were up on the Hill. And in fact, Grace was, what did they call it? A team lead for the survivors. Because she's been up there so much, right? She's so good at what she does.
Grace, you're so cool.
Grace, high school student, right?
Yeah, I want to be her when I grow
do.
up.
And so these are the words. I'm going to read it from Aubrey. So overall, Grace's take, so Grace, the advocate herself, the survivor, Grace's take was overall the advocates were more angry at what was happened with research in funding. From Aubrey's perspective, she says, from my perspective, there was definitely a noticeable shift in the tone overall. There was more emphasis and urgency in the conversations than in past years. There was also a deeper recognition and realization of the role that patients and families play in all of this and in the shaping of the future of pediatric cancer initiatives, research, and care. In the Hill meetings, we were overall well received per usual, and many offices genuinely expressed their interest in the visits and hearing the stories and lived experiences of those impacted. There was overarching support for the bills discussed and overall funding for pediatric cancer research. Almost everyone we met with has a connection to cancer. Then we sit survivors in front of them, and how can they not acknowledge the need for the asks that we have? Grace was team leader for a group of survivors for all the meetings on the Hill. That's impactful for the offices to just have kids there, and they have clear asks and ways to make an impact for them. With all of this, there was some messaging from the legislator side that was a bit mixed on what was happening and that the impacts are and what the impacts are and what they will continue to be, how they will continue to be felt. And then we'll go into this a little bit, but they specifically mentioned the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, which Grace was the childhood cancer survivor that represented CCDI in 2019 when it was announced. And the hearing, and so hearing the executive order this week was encouraging. Again, national attention to childhood cancer and more funding for this critical initiative. This advocate community welcomes this action for sure. And there is still a sense that consistent, stable, sustained bipartisan legislative support is critical to making long-term progress. So kind of to summarize all of this, there are more advocates coming out each year that they do this. Progress is slow, but it's happening. The sentiment that we need to keep speaking up for change for these kids is the loudest she has ever seen it. So all in all, what I take away from that is they're telling people what needs to happen. And it seems like there's a little bit of confusion about what the actual impact of what's happening is going to be.
Yeah, it's hard to hear people, we want our lawmakers to hear us. Mm-hmm. It's hard to hear they're confused.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear that we can be well received, but someone doesn't know what to do about it.
Right.
When they're people in office.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult to know that the only way to get real truth, that the government itself is confused, is that a teen cancer survivor has to go sit in someone's office and point out to them that there's a problem. None of that makes me feel great about my government, but it makes me feel incredible to know that I could put Grace in with any survivor I've ever met, and they are not stopping.
Yeah.
Because they know. And I would also just say they shouldn't have to do this. That is not fair.
Yeah. So they specifically mentioned in that in the response of their experience advocating the CCDI initiative. So what is that one? What happened over the summer with the NCI budget, and what has happened here just this week from where we're recording this podcast episode? So CCDI, the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, is a 10-year project where investing of the money from the NCI that goes to pediatric cancer, $50 million a year for 10 years was committed starting, I think, in 2019, but the first time it was done was 2020, if I'm accurate.
At the time, awesome.
Amazing. Because what does it do? So essentially what that does is everywhere across the country, if you have cancer, you go into your hospital and they are collecting data on your cancer, the genetics of your tumor, how you're responding to different treatments. There's all this information, and it takes time and it takes effort to translate all of that from your personal information about Dana to information that can be shared. So we have to take all of your personal information out of it. We have to be able to characterize it. And so a lot of work has to go into from getting to the point where we're getting information from a patient to we can use this information in our research. So that's a big effort. It's also really difficult when you have hospitals reporting to different regions and different groups across the country. They might all do things a little bit differently. So that's where this effort comes in, making sure that all the information that we are gathering is usable across the country. And that takes a lot of time. It takes concerted effort, and it takes resources, which is why it was planned to go over 10 years. So when we first started talking about these federal budget cuts, we were like, oh, but it still explicitly says in the NCI information that they are still going to retain the $50 million in discretionary funding for 2026. That was our silver lining.
Yeah, be happy about something.
Yeah, well, it was like, okay, well, that's really great. Yeah. Wonderful. This week, and that's what Grace and Aubrey were mentioning about, like, sort of the end cap of what happens at the end of their advocacy work over September. This first week of October, it was announced via executive order that there's going to be a federal budget match of that $50 million into the CCDI initiative so that it would total $100 million within that effort. So targeting data gathering for current cancer patients and using AI to assist in data review of cancer and patient genetics. So not just gathering all the info, but how are we investing in making sure we can do something with it, that we can analyze it, that we can the goal here is that you go into the hospital, they take your information they're gathering all this information about your genetics, your tumor, your cancer, and they can put it into a computer software and spit it out and come up with the best treatment option for you specifically.
Yes. Sounds like exactly what I want AI to do.
100%.
But let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
What data can they collect if we're slashing the money for the actual grants for treatment?
Right. So
there's less and less data to put into the system then, right?
Well, I think it's a little bit different. I think what it is it's gathering information on what we are seeing in cancer now.
Okay.
And that's wonderful. That's like step one. Ideally, what you would have then is people who are looking at creating better treatment options from that information and then doing the research required to develop better treatments. So while it is important for your doctor to be able to put all of your information into the system and hopefully one day be able to like spit out, hey, this chemo, which we've never used for your cancer, would be an ideal treatment based on all the information we see here. But how do you get that cancer treatment when it's never been FDA approved for your type of cancer? So there's a million other steps that unfortunately, even with that $50 million match to the CCDI funding, we still are seeing like $155 million gap in that type of research. So while, I mean, we want to be able to tell you like, yes, that is a good thing. It is a good thing. We do need that money in there. I don't think it's proof of investment in long-term efforts to make this a disease that we can treat and cure in this country.
Yeah, it's easy to be grateful when everything's going good, right? And then it's so much harder to be grateful about this one piece of the pie that was already this really tiny pie being able to stay there.
I know. I wanted to be like, that is a win. And I can see everybody being like, that's amazing. And I do think it's great. And yet the thing that keeps coming up in the NCI report, whenever they would initiate, like, here's the cut to this line item from our NCI budget. This budget line item is what created the following innovation. But the following innovation happened because of 10 years plus of consistent compounding research. So the idea to me that a one-time infusion of cash can sort of make up for consistent like multiple investments in moving cancer research forward, that's not going to happen.
We need all of the pieces and parts to work together in order to actually move the needle. And that's just not what is happening here.
Correct. And so, yes, how does that impact CKC, right? Like, and you know, we taking all this information and we're like, well, how does that change what we do? The answer is it doesn't. It just means that where we are infusing our investment is going to change just and maybe be responsive to what the challenges are that our researchers are focusing on. It is up to us as a foundation to, you know, understand the reality of this new landscape of pediatric cancer funding and work with our researchers to figure out how within our mission we can best help continue to move the needle forward. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, our job doesn't change. We were founded when, you know, pediatric cancer was underfunded. It's still underfunded. Yeah. We still have a job to do. We're just getting stronger. But I think the thing that I keep reiterating to people is that it is not necessarily even just that there is this federal funding cut. It is that it happens with such a large amount so quickly. Yeah. So if what everybody wanted to do was shift pediatric cancer research out of federal government purview and within, you know, our world, great. Give us probably 25 years to be all the foundations to be able to make up for that cut. Decrease it slowly so we can incrementally increase our revenue input. That would be, if you were interested in funding pediatric cancer research and making sure that still happens, that would be even a more reasonable way to do it other than just a quick
These kids deserve thoughtfulness and care and not just words, for sure.
And they're doctors too, right?
Yeah.
Our researchers, I mean, our families want this research to happen. They want these treatments to be created. And our researchers who are physician scientists, so they spend time in the lab making better treatments, but they also spend time in the clinic treating families and treating kids. And they want to be able to come to them with better tools.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, before Viv kicks us out of this podcast studio, she's come by with the timer twice.
Has she? I didn't even see it.
Well, we're talking about the thing. The whole thing. Let's talk about Florida funding.
Yeah.
Because we're here in Florida.
Absolutely.
And there has been some investment coming out about investing in the Foundation of Cancer Research in Florida. So investing in hospital systems and research centers for cancer.
Exactly.
We like that.
We love it. Yeah, CKC we're in Central Florida. We have some research that has been funded in our state. Even locally, we have 3 hospital systems right here in Orlando.
Wonderful hospital
systems. And we would love to fund more in our own backyard. When we have, over the history of our organization, evaluated applications, there are institutions in other parts of the country that are supporting their research and their researcher. They have more of a foundation to be able to generate an entire department, an entire group of scientists that are able to not only have and dedicate their research, but have these innovative ideas. But they're surrounded by a system and an institution that can support that and take our grant dollars and be able to support the work that they're doing. So this is really encouraging. I've spoken to a couple people who are, in the hospital systems that are going to be receiving this money. They are so stoked to be able to have foundational dollars to be able to build out what they're doing. And they're excited to be able to come to us with potential researchers in the future. And we're so excited about that. And to me, it's the timing, right?
Yeah.
We have been arguing and advocating and desiring and wanting more of an investment for cancer research in Florida for decades. And the time is now, and it's great. Again, we are thankful. And it stinks that it is coming on the heels of a federal funding cut too.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm just tired of being grateful for scraps.
Yeah.
I am grateful for every child who survives. I'm grateful for every child who has more time with their family. I'm grateful for every researcher that stays in this field with every hurdle getting added. But I am not grateful for scraps.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to leave that for today. I think that, all of these good things we know, there is no substitute for long-term, consistent research efforts. This is going to take all of us, and we know that every hope, every chance we have for survivorship comes out of research, long-term investment in research.
Yeah, absolutely. And so right now our superpower is we're a foundation and we can be collaborative. We can work with other foundations. We can work with families. We can work with donors to get the researchers, the information, the resources, and the support that they need. So that's what we're committed to do.
If you stuck with us till the end of the episode,
We've been ranting for a long time.
We could go another hour.
Continue.
This is what we do. And we get to work. If you stuck with us to the end of this episode, then perhaps you are interested in learning more. And if so, I suggest you go to cannonballkidscancer.org. And we have a lot of great information on our website that the incredible research team at CKC, Val and Matt, shout out to them, have put together to help you understand what's going on, to help you understand what a huge packet from the NCI is trying to tell us. So go to our website, learn about the changes, and also learn about what we're doing to make an impact in pediatric cancer research. I hope that you will take this seriously because, as you noted, everyone knows someone or is someone affected by cancer. This isn't going anywhere unless we all invest in research. Thank you for joining us today.
Join us as we transform fear into courage and turn adversity into opportunities for change.
If you want to be involved in the conversations that create change in the world of pediatric cancer, take a moment, share, like, and subscribe.